This story is titled, I Caught My Husband Pretending to Go to Work Every Day for 3 months, and the truth about where he was going has destroyed our marriage. Hey Reddit, I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I'm writing this from my sister's guest room because I can't be in my own house right now. I honestly don't even know where to start with this, but I need to get it all out and maybe hear from people who aren't emotionally involved in this mess. My husband, let's call him Derek, is 31, and we've been married for 4 years, together for 7 total. Up until about a week ago, I thought we had a solid marriage, the kind where we told each other everything, where we were partners in every sense of the word. I was so incredibly wrong. Let me give you some background. Derek and I met in college, both of us studying business, and we just clicked immediately. He was funny, ambitious, kind to everyone he met, and he treated me like I was the most important person in the world. We got married right after graduation, moved to a new city for his job opportunity, and I found work at a marketing agency. We bought a small house 2 years ago, adopted a dog named Biscuit, talked about starting a family soon. Everything seemed perfect, like we were living the life we'd always planned. Derek works in sales, or at least that's what I thought he was doing. He worked for this mid-sized tech company, had been there for about 5 years, and seemed to be doing well. He'd come home and tell me about his day, about difficult clients or funny interactions with coworkers, about his boss who was kind of a jerk but tolerable. I had no reason to doubt any of it. His paychecks came in regularly, we had health insurance through his job, everything seemed completely normal. About 4 months ago, I started noticing some small changes in Derek's behavior. Nothing huge, just little things that seemed slightly off. He was coming home more tired than usual. Sometimes he'd be quieter during dinner, less talkative about his day. When I'd ask him what was wrong, he'd say work was just stressful, that his boss was putting a lot of pressure on him to meet sales targets. I believed him completely, even tried to be extra supportive, giving him space when he seemed overwhelmed. He also started spending more time in our home office with the door closed, said he was working on reports or catching up on emails. Again, this didn't seem that weird to me. I work from home 2 days a week, and I do the same thing, close the door to focus. I respected his privacy and his need for quiet time. Looking back now, I feel like such an idiot for not seeing the signs. About 2 months ago, Derek started leaving for work earlier than usual. He'd always left around 8 in the morning, but suddenly, he was leaving at 7 or even 6:30. When I asked about it, he said his boss had implemented these new early morning team meetings that were mandatory. It was annoying, he said, but what could he do? I felt bad for him having to get up so early, so I started waking up with him to make him coffee and breakfast before he left. I thought I was being a good wife, supportive and caring. Then about 6 weeks ago, I noticed he started dressing differently for work. Derek had always been a pretty casual dresser, usually khakis and a button-down shirt, nothing too formal. But suddenly he was wearing suits, nice ones, with ties and dress shoes. When I commented on it, he said the company had implemented a new dress code, that they were trying to look more professional for clients. I actually thought he looked really handsome in the suits, told him so every morning. He seemed pleased by the compliments, but also kind of uncomfortable, which I attributed to him not being used to dressing up. Life continued pretty normally despite these small changes. We still had our weekly date nights, still watched our favorite shows together, still talked about our future and our plans. I had absolutely no reason to suspect that anything was seriously wrong. Derek seemed like the same man I'd married, just a bit more stressed from work. Then 3 weeks ago, something happened that started to crack the facade. I was having lunch with my friend Michelle, who also lives in our city, and she mentioned that she'd seen Derek at the mall in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. She said he was just walking around, looking at stores, seemed to be alone. She'd called out to him, but he had headphones in and didn't hear her. When she told me this, I felt this weird twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I told Michelle he'd probably been meeting a client there or on his lunch break. She seemed to accept this explanation, and we moved on to other topics. But that night, I casually mentioned to Derek that Michelle had seen him at the mall. I watched his face carefully, and I swear he went pale for just a second before recovering. "Oh yeah," he said, "I had a lunch meeting with a potential client at that restaurant in the mall, must have been before or after that." His explanation made sense, and I felt silly for being suspicious. But something about the way he'd reacted, that momentary flash of panic, stuck with me. I started paying more attention after that, not in an obsessive way, just being more aware. I noticed that Derek was always very careful about his phone, never leaving it unattended, always taking it with him even just to go to the bathroom. Again, not necessarily a red flag on its own, lots of people are attached to their phones, but combined with everything else, it felt significant. 2 weeks ago, I decided to do something I'd never done before in our entire relationship. I checked our phone records online. I felt terrible doing it, like I was violating his privacy, but I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. I logged into our account and pulled up Derek's call and text logs. What I found made my blood run cold. There were hundreds of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize. Calls during his work hours, texts early in the morning and late at night, constant communication with this unknown number. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking, trying to come up with an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a work colleague, a client. But why would he be texting a client at 11 at night? I copied down the number and just sat with it for a few days, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Derek immediately, but another part of me was scared of what I'd find out. I kept thinking maybe there was a reasonable explanation, maybe I was being paranoid and jealous for no reason. Finally, 4 days ago, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the number from my phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. It rang 3 times, then a woman answered. She had a young-sounding voice, friendly, she just said hello like a normal person answering their phone. I froze. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. After a few seconds of silence, she said hello again and I hung up. I sat there on my couch, Biscuit curling up next to me like he knew I was upset, and I just cried. A woman. Derek was constantly calling and texting a woman I didn't know about. That night when Derek came home, I was cold to him. I couldn't help it. He noticed immediately, asked what was wrong, and I told him I had a headache and wasn't feeling well. He seemed concerned, offered to make dinner, which he did. We ate in near silence and I went to bed early, pretending to sleep when he came to bed later. The next morning I made a decision. I was going to follow him to work. I know how that sounds, I know it's a violation of trust and privacy, but at that point I felt like I was losing my mind. I needed to know what was going on. So yesterday morning, I told Derek I was going into the office early for a meeting, even though I was supposed to work from home. I got dressed for work, left the house the same time he did, and then I circled back and parked down the street where I could see our driveway. I watched Derek leave in his car, heading in the direction of his office, and I followed him at a distance. But he didn't go to his office. He drove right past the exit he should have taken, kept going on the highway for another 20 minutes, and then pulled off into a residential neighborhood I'd never been to. My heart was racing as I followed him, keeping a few cars back so he wouldn't notice me. He pulled into the driveway of a small, neat house with a blue door and a garden in front. And then I watched him get out of his car, walk up to that blue door, and let himself in with a key. He had a key to someone else's house. I sat in my car down the street, completely frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. I waited for maybe 15 minutes, trying to figure out what to do, when the door opened again and Derek came out. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, with long dark hair and a pretty face. And she wasn't just standing there, she was holding a baby that couldn't have been more than a few months old. Derek took the baby from her, held it, kissed its head, then handed it back. They talked for a minute, he kissed her cheek, and then he got back in his car and drove away. I couldn't move. I literally could not move my body. I sat in my car watching this woman go back inside the house with this baby, and my brain just couldn't make sense of what I'd seen. Derek had another family. My husband, the man I'd been married to for 4 years, had another woman and a baby that I knew nothing about. I don't remember driving back home. I must have been on autopilot because suddenly I was just sitting in our driveway, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I went inside, called in sick to work, and just sat on the couch in complete shock. Biscuit kept trying to comfort me, but I barely noticed him. Derek came home at his normal time, around 6 p.m., acting completely normal. He kissed my forehead, asked about my day, started talking about his. I just stared at him like I was seeing a stranger. This man I'd loved for 7 years, who I'd built a life with, was living an entire secret life I knew nothing about. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't find the words. I just told him I still wasn't feeling well and went to bed early again. I lay there in the dark, listening to him watch TV in the living room, and I felt like my entire world had collapsed. This morning, I woke up before Derek and I made a decision. I was going to go back to that house and talk to the woman. I needed answers, and clearly Derek wasn't going to give them to me voluntarily. So after Derek left for work, I drove back to that neighborhood, parked in front of the blue door, and knocked. The woman answered, holding the baby. Up close, she was even younger than I'd thought, maybe 24 or 25. She looked confused to see me standing there. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. "I'm Derek's wife," I said, and I watched all the color drain from her face. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stood there holding the baby, looking like she might faint. Finally, she stepped back and said, "You should probably come in." I followed her into the house. It was small but nicely decorated, warm and cozy. There were baby things everywhere, a bouncer in the corner, toys on the floor, that specific baby smell in the air. She gestured for me to sit on the couch, and she sat across from me, the baby fussing slightly in her arms. "I don't even know your name," I said, my voice shaking. "It's Emma," she said quietly. "And this is Olivia. She's 3 months old." I stared at this baby, this tiny human being, and did the math in my head. Derek would have got Emma pregnant about a year ago, while we were married, while we were talking about starting our own family. "How long?" I asked. Emma looked down at the baby. "About a year and a half." We met at a coffee shop near his office. I was working there as a barista. He came in every morning and we just started talking. I didn't know he was married at first, I swear. He wasn't wearing a ring and he never mentioned a wife. "When did you find out?" I asked. She looked ashamed. "Not until I was already pregnant. I'd been seeing him for about 6 months when I found out I was expecting. I was scared to tell him, but when I did, he admitted he was married. He said he was going to leave you, that he'd just been waiting for the right time." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. He was going to leave me. My husband was planning to leave me for a barista half his age, and I'd had no idea. "Obviously he didn't leave," I said, and I could hear the bitterness in my own voice. Emma shook her head, looking miserable. "He kept saying he would, that he just needed more time, that it was complicated." I believed him because I loved him and I was having his baby. "After Olivia was born, he promised he'd tell you and start the divorce process. But he said you were going through a hard time at work, and he didn't want to hurt you when you were already stressed." I almost laughed at that. I hadn't been going through a hard time at work. If anything, the last few months had been pretty good professionally. It was just another lie in an endless series of lies. "So what's the arrangement here?" I asked, gesturing around the house. "How does this work?" Emma explained that Derek had been supporting her financially since she got pregnant. He'd helped her get this house, paid the rent and utilities, gave her money for baby expenses. She'd quit her job at the coffee shop when she started showing, and Derek had assured her he'd take care of everything. "He comes here every weekday," she continued. "Tells you he's going to work, but he comes here instead. Spends the day with me and Olivia, helps out with the baby, acts like we're a normal family. Then he goes back to you at night." "Does he actually still have a job?" I asked, because at this point I didn't know what was real anymore. Emma nodded. "Yes, but he's been working from home mostly. His company lets him do that. He works from here, from my house, during the day while helping with Olivia. So for the past 3 months, Derek hadn't been going to an office at all. He'd been playing house with his mistress and secret baby while I sat at home completely oblivious. The early mornings, the suits, the stress he claimed to be under, it was all part of this elaborate lie. I asked Emma if she knew about me, if Derek talked about me. She said yes, but not much. He'd told her we'd grown apart, that our marriage had been over for a while emotionally, even if not legally, that he was staying out of obligation and guilt. None of this was true. Our marriage had been fine, or so I'd thought. We'd been happy, planning our future, talking about having kids of our own. Then Emma said something that broke me even further. She said Derek had told her he loved her, that she and Olivia were his real family, that he was just waiting for the right moment to make it official. She'd believed him completely because why wouldn't she? He was there every day, acting like a devoted father and partner. I don't know how long I sat in that living room talking to Emma. We went through everything, compared stories, filled in gaps. She showed me text messages between them, photos of Derek with the baby, proof of the financial support he'd been giving her. With every new piece of evidence, my heart broke a little more. Emma started crying at one point, said she never meant to be the other woman, that if she'd known the truth from the beginning she never would have gotten involved with him. I actually believed her. She seemed genuinely devastated, not just for herself but for me too. We were both victims of Derek's lies, just in different ways. Finally, I asked her what she wanted to happen now. She said she didn't know, that she loved Derek but she couldn't trust him anymore, not after seeing how easily he'd been lying to both of us. She said she needed to think about what was best for Olivia, that her daughter deserved better than a father who lived a double life. I left Emma's house around noon, completely numb. I drove around aimlessly for a while, not ready to go home but not knowing where else to go. Eventually, I called my sister, broke down crying on the phone, and told her everything. She told me to pack a bag and come stay with her, that I shouldn't be alone right now and definitely shouldn't be there when Derek got home. So that's what I did. I went home, packed enough clothes and toiletries for a few days, grabbed Biscuit and his food and toys, and drove to my sister's place across town. I left Derek a text that just said, "I know everything, I'm at Sarah's, don't contact me right now." Then I turned off my phone. I've been at my sister's house for about 8 hours now. I turned my phone back on an hour ago, and I had 47 missed calls from Derek, dozens of texts ranging from confused to panicked to apologetic. I haven't read most of them and I haven't responded to any. I don't even know what I'd say. My sister has been amazing, letting me cry, listening to the whole story, not judging me for being so clueless. She's also furious at Derek, has threatened multiple times to go over to our house and slash his tires, which I appreciate even though I won't let her do it. Her husband has been great too, giving me space but also being supportive, offering to be there if I need anything. I still can't fully process what's happened. My entire marriage was a lie. For over a year, Derek has been living a double life, building a whole separate family while coming home to me every night and acting like everything was normal. The man I thought I knew, the man I loved and trusted completely, doesn't exist. He's a stranger who's been playing a role in my life. And the thing that keeps circling in my mind is, what was his endgame? Was he ever actually going to choose? Or was he just planning to keep this going indefinitely, bouncing between two families, lying to both of us forever? How long would it have continued if I hadn't happened to check the phone records, if I hadn't followed him, if I hadn't confronted Emma? I keep thinking about all the little moments over the past year that make sense now. Times when Derek seemed distracted or distant, when he'd snap at me for no reason, when he'd be extra affectionate like he was overcompensating for guilt. I'd attributed it all to work stress or just normal relationship fluctuations, but it was the weight of maintaining this massive deception. And the financial aspect is blowing my mind too. I went through our bank accounts this afternoon, and Derek has been funneling money to Emma for over a year. Thousands of dollars for rent, baby expenses, furniture, everything. We have joint accounts, but Derek handles most of the finances, and I trusted him completely, so I never really scrutinized the statements. Now I can see regular withdrawals and transfers that I'd never questioned. We're not wealthy by any means, we live comfortably but we're not rich. Which means Derek has been essentially supporting two households on his salary, and somehow making it work without me noticing our finances were stretched. I don't even know how he managed it, but clearly he's been very careful and strategic about hiding the money trail. My sister asked me what I'm going to do, and honestly I don't have an answer yet. Obviously the marriage is over, I can't imagine any scenario where I'd stay with Derek after this. But there are so many practical considerations. We own a house together, we have joint debts, shared assets, a whole life that's intertwined. Untangling all of that is going to be complicated and messy. And then there's the baby to consider, Olivia, Derek's daughter. My husband has a child with another woman, and that child exists whether I like it or not. If Derek and I divorce, he'll have custody arrangements with Emma, child support obligations, a whole co-parenting relationship. His life will forever be connected to this woman and this child that came from his betrayal. Part of me feels bad for Emma, which is weird to say about your husband's mistress. But she's 24 years old with a 3-month-old baby, financially dependent on a man who's been lying to her just as much as he's been lying to me. She thought she was in a relationship with someone who was going to leave his wife and commit to her. Instead, she's stuck in this limbo, the other woman with a baby, waiting for a man who's never going to fully choose her. And that poor baby, Olivia didn't ask for any of this. She didn't ask to be born into this mess, to have a father who splits his time between two families, to be a secret that her dad kept from his wife for 3 months. Whatever happens with the adults, that little girl is going to grow up with the consequences of Derek's choices. I finally read through some of Derek's texts a little while ago. They're exactly what you'd expect, a progression from confusion to panic to desperate apologies. He's begging me to talk to him, saying he can explain everything, saying he loves me and made a terrible mistake. He's not denying anything, not trying to gaslight me or claim I misunderstood what I saw, I guess he knows there's no point. The evidence is overwhelming. One text stood out to me. He wrote, I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. I was just trying to do the right thing for everyone, and I ended up destroying everything. I don't even know what that means. What right thing was he trying to do? Knock up a barista and then try to maintain relationships with both of us. How is that the right thing? My sister thinks I should talk to a lawyer before I talk to Derek, get my ducks in a row legally before engaging with him. She's probably right. I need to protect myself financially and make sure I come out of this divorce in the best position possible. Derek has already proven he's willing to lie and deceive, so I can't trust that he'll be fair or honest during divorce proceedings. I called my mom earlier and told her what happened. She was shocked and horrified, couldn't believe that Derek would do something like this. My mom always loved Derek, thought he was the perfect husband for me, bragged to her friends about what a good man I'd married. Hearing the disappointment and anger in her voice when I told her the truth was hard, it made everything feel more real somehow. My mom offered to come stay with me, but I told her I was okay at Sarah's for now. I think I need some time to process everything before I'm ready to be around too many people, even people who love and support me. Right now, I just feel raw and exposed, like my entire life has been turned inside out for everyone to see. I keep having these moments where I forget, where everything feels normal for a second, and then reality comes crashing back. I'll think about what to make for dinner and start mentally planning to cook for Derek before remembering I'm not at home. I'm at my sister's, my marriage is over. It's this constant cycle of forgetting and remembering, and each time I remember it's like a fresh wound. This evening, Derek showed up at my sister's house. I was in the guest room when the doorbell rang, and I heard my sister answer. I heard Derek's voice, asking if he could please talk to me just for a few minutes. I heard my sister tell him no, that I wasn't ready to see him, that he needed to leave. But he kept insisting, saying he needed to explain, that I deserved to hear his side. I came out of the bedroom and told Sarah it was okay, that I'd talk to him. She looked at me like I was crazy but stepped aside. Derek was standing on the porch, and he looked terrible. His eyes were red like he'd been crying, his hair was messy. He was still wearing the suit he'd left in this morning, but it was rumpled. He looked like his whole world had fallen apart, which I guess it had. We sat on the porch steps, not too close, and for a minute neither of us said anything. Finally Derek started talking, and once he started he couldn't seem to stop. He told me everything, the whole story from his perspective. How he'd met Emma at the coffee shop and had been attracted to her immediately. How he'd started going there every day just to see her, how they'd started flirting, how it had escalated to meeting outside of work. He said he'd never meant for it to become serious, that it was supposed to just be a fling, something exciting and different from his regular life. But then he'd developed real feelings for Emma, and by the time he realized how deep he was in, she was pregnant. When Emma told him about the baby, Derek said he'd panicked. He knew he should leave me and commit to Emma and the baby, or end things with Emma and focus on our marriage, but he couldn't bring himself to do either. He said he loved both of us in different ways, that he couldn't imagine his life without me, but also couldn't abandon Emma and his child. So he'd made the decision to try to maintain both relationships, to be there for Emma and the baby while also staying married to me. He'd convinced himself that he could make it work, that he could keep everyone happy if he just managed his time carefully enough. He'd been living this double life for months, genuinely believing he was doing the right thing by not abandoning either family. I asked him if he understood how insane that sounded, how delusional. He nodded, said he knew now that it was unsustainable, that he'd been lying to himself as much as to everyone else. He said the guilt had been eating him alive, that he'd wanted to come clean so many times but was too afraid of losing everything. Well, now you've lost everything anyway, I said. Emma knows you've been lying to her, I know you've been lying to me, and neither of us can ever trust you again. He started crying then, really crying, saying he was sorry over and over. He said he loved me, that I was his wife and his best friend, that he'd made the worst mistake of his life. He begged me to consider couples counseling, to give him a chance to make things right, to not give up on our marriage. I looked at this man who I'd loved for 7 years, who I'd trusted completely, and I felt nothing but pity and disgust. There was no anger in that moment, just this overwhelming sadness for what we'd lost, for what he'd thrown away. Derek, I said quietly, you have a 3-month-old daughter with another woman. You've been playing house with her while coming home to me every night. You've been lying to my face every single day for over a year. There's no coming back from this. There's no amount of counseling that can fix this. But he kept pleading, saying people get past infidelity all the time, that if I just gave him a chance he could prove himself, could show me he was committed to our marriage. I almost felt bad for him. He seemed so desperate, so broken. But then I remembered Emma and Olivia, remembered the house with the blue door, remembered watching him kiss that baby's head, and any sympathy I felt evaporated. I told Derek I wanted a divorce. I told him I never wanted to see him again unless absolutely necessary for legal purposes. I told him he'd destroyed the best thing in his life for what? Excitement, novelty, a younger woman. I told him I hoped it was worth it because he'd lost me forever. He sat there crying, and I went back inside and closed the door. I watched through the window as he sat on those porch steps for another 10 minutes, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Eventually he got up and left, and I haven't heard from him since. My sister made me tea and we sat up talking for hours. She asked if I was sure about the divorce, if there was any part of me that wanted to try to work things out. I told her honestly that there wasn't, that the Derek I'd loved was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. The man who could do what he'd done, who could lie so easily and maintain such an elaborate deception, that wasn't someone I wanted to be married to. I called a lawyer this morning, one my sister's friend recommended who specializes in divorce cases. I have an appointment tomorrow to discuss my options and start the legal process. The lawyer asked if there were any children involved, and I had to explain the situation, that no, Derek and I don't have kids, but he has a 3-month-old with another woman. I could hear the surprise in her voice, even though I'm sure she's heard plenty of crazy stories in her line of work. I also started looking at apartments today, places I could afford on my own. Our house will have to be sold as part of the divorce settlement, and I can't imagine living there anyway, not with all those memories, not knowing Derek was leaving from there every morning to go play daddy to another woman's baby. I need a fresh start, a place that's entirely mine with no connection to him. My boss has been understanding about me needing a few days off work. I told her I was dealing with a family emergency, which is technically true. I'll have to tell her the real story eventually. Derek and I have been to company events together. People know we're married. The gossip is going to be brutal when word gets out. Everyone thought we were this perfect couple, and now I'll be the wife whose husband had a secret baby. It's humiliating. I've been thinking a lot about Emma too. I actually feel like I should reach out to her, make sure she's okay. I know that sounds crazy maintaining contact with my husband's mistress, but she's in an impossible situation too. She's a single mom now, financially dependent on Derek, connected to him forever through their daughter. And Derek has proven he can't be trusted, so who knows how he'll treat her going forward. Part of me wonders if Emma and I could somehow be allies in this. We're both victims of Derek's lies and manipulation. We both deserve better than what he's given us. Maybe there's a way we could support each other through the divorce and custody proceedings, present a united front against the man who betrayed us both. My sister thinks I'm being too generous, that Emma made her own choices and I don't owe her anything. And maybe she's right. But I keep thinking about that baby, about Olivia, and how she deserves to have stable, healthy adults in her life. If her parents are going to be at war with each other, she's the one who'll suffer most. I've been doing a lot of reflecting over the past day about our relationship, trying to identify when things started to go wrong. The truth is, I don't think they did, at least not from my perspective. Right up until a week ago, I thought we were happy. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. We still had sex regularly, still said I love you every day, still seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company, which makes this all so much worse somehow. If Derek had been obviously unhappy, if we'd been fighting all the time or growing apart, I could at least understand the impulse to seek comfort elsewhere. But we weren't. Or at least I thought we weren't. Clearly Derek was living a completely different reality than I was. I keep wondering what I missed, what signs were there that I was too blind or trusting to see. The late nights working, the early mornings, the stress he claimed was work-related. Were there other tells I didn't pick up on? Did he smell different when he came home, like Emma's perfume or the baby? Did he slip up with details about his day that I didn't catch? Or maybe I did notice things and just dismissed them because I trusted him so completely. That's the thing about trust, it makes you vulnerable. It makes you willing to accept explanations at face value, to give people the benefit of the doubt. Derek knew I trusted him, and he exploited that trust for over a year. I talked to Emma again today. I called her this morning, and we ended up talking for almost 2 hours. She told me more about her relationship with Derek, about how attentive and romantic he'd been in the beginning, how he'd made her feel special and loved. She said he'd talked about our marriage, painting it as something that was already over in all but name, saying we were basically roommates who stayed together out of habit. Hearing Emma describe the version of me that Derek had presented to her was surreal. According to him, I was cold and distant, focused only on my career, uninterested in starting a family. None of that was true. I'd been warm and loving, I'd always made time for Derek, and we'd been actively discussing trying for a baby in the next year. He'd created this fictional version of me to justify his affair to Emma. Emma said she felt terrible, that if she'd known the truth she never would have believed Derek's story about leaving me. She said meeting me, seeing that I was a real person who'd been genuinely hurt by all this, made her realize how manipulated she'd been. Derek had lied to both of us, told each of us what we needed to hear to keep us both in his life. I asked Emma what she was going to do now, how she was going to manage financially and practically. She said she didn't know, that she'd been so dependent on Derek that she'd never really thought about supporting herself and Olivia alone. She dropped out of community college when she got pregnant, quit her job, let Derek take care of everything. Now she was realizing how vulnerable that had made her. I actually found myself giving her advice, telling her she should talk to a lawyer too, make sure Derek would be legally obligated to provide child support, protect herself and Olivia financially. She seemed grateful for the guidance, said she hadn't even thought about lawyers yet, she'd been too overwhelmed by everything. Before we hung up, Emma asked me something unexpected. She asked if I hated her. I had to think about it for a minute before answering honestly. I told her I didn't hate her, that I was angry about the situation, but I understood she'd been lied to just like I had. I said Derek was the one who'd made vows to me, who'd promised to be faithful, and he was the one who'd broken those promises. Emma had been wrong to get involved with a married man, but Derek was the one who truly betrayed me. Emma started crying and thanked me for not treating her like a monster. She said she'd been prepared for me to scream at her or say terrible things, and instead I'd been more understanding than she deserved. We ended the call on surprisingly good terms, and I felt lighter somehow, like extending forgiveness to Emma had lifted some of the weight I'd been carrying. My appointment with the lawyer was this afternoon. Her name is Patricia, and she's been practicing family law for 20 years, has seen every kind of divorce mess imaginable. I laid out the whole situation for her, showed her the evidence I had of Derek's affair and secret child, explained our financial situation and assets. Patricia told me I had a strong case for divorce based on adultery, and that given Derek's deception about finances, I'd likely be entitled to a favorable settlement. She explained the process, how long it would take, what to expect. She also warned me that things could get messy if Derek decided to fight me on asset division, but given the circumstances, most judges would be sympathetic to my position. We discussed the house, and Patricia recommended we put it on the market as soon as possible, split the proceeds as part of the divorce settlement. She said trying to keep it would be financially difficult for me on my own, and it would just prolong my connection to Derek. I agreed, even though the thought of selling our home was painful. We'd been so happy there, or at least I'd been happy there, while Derek was apparently miserable enough to create an entire second life. Patricia also asked about Derek's relationship with Emma and Olivia, said it could be relevant to the divorce proceedings. I told her everything I knew, and she took detailed notes. She said Derek's financial support of another household could be evidence of dissipation of marital assets, which could work in my favor when dividing property. By the time I left Patricia's office, my head was spinning with legal terms and procedures and timelines, but I also felt more in control than I had since this whole thing started. I was taking action, moving forward, not just sitting around crying and feeling sorry for myself. This evening, Derek texted me again. He said he'd been served with divorce papers and wanted to talk before things went any further. He said he understood I was hurt and angry, but he hoped we could work things out amicably, that we didn't have to destroy each other in a messy legal battle. I didn't respond. My sister made dinner tonight, my favorite comfort food, and we ate together while watching mindless TV. It felt almost normal, except for the fact that my life has completely fallen apart. I keep waiting to feel something, rage or devastation or something intense, but mostly I just feel numb. Like I'm going through the motions of handling this crisis, but not really processing the emotional impact yet. I know at some point it's all going to hit me, the full weight of what I've lost. Not just my marriage, but my vision of my future, my trust in my own judgment, my belief that I knew my husband. All of that is gone now, and eventually I'm going to have to grieve it. But right now I'm just focused on putting one foot in front of the other, making the practical decisions that need to be made. It's been 3 days since I last wrote, and things have continued to spiral. Derek has been trying to contact me constantly, showing up at Sarah's house, waiting outside my office, sending gifts and flowers with apology notes. My sister finally called him and threatened to file a restraining order if he didn't back off, which seems to have worked for now. I went back to our house yesterday to pack more of my things. I'd been putting it off because I didn't want to face all those memories, but I needed clothes and personal items and I couldn't avoid it forever. Derek wasn't there. I'd coordinated with him through my lawyer to make sure we wouldn't overlap. Walking into that house was so strange. Everything looked exactly the same, like I'd just left yesterday instead of days ago. Biscuit's toys were still scattered around, Derek's coffee cup was still in the sink, the book I'd been reading was still on the nightstand. It was like a time capsule of our life before everything exploded. I packed systematically, trying not to think too hard about each item I put in boxes. Clothes, toiletries, books, photos. I found our wedding album and had to sit down for a minute, looking at pictures of Derek and me on the happiest day of our lives. We looked so young and hopeful, so certain that we'd be together forever. I almost threw the album away, but something stopped me. Maybe someday I'll want to remember that day before everything went wrong. While I was packing, I found something that broke me all over again. In Derek's nightstand drawer, there was an ultrasound photo. Emma's ultrasound, from when she was pregnant with Olivia. He'd kept it in our bedroom, in the drawer right next to where I slept every night. I held that photo in my hands and just cried, thinking about Derek looking at it while I was sleeping beside him, thinking about his unborn child while lying next to his wife. I also found a burner phone hidden in his sock drawer. A cheap prepaid phone that was clearly how he'd been communicating with Emma without me seeing it on our phone bill. I turned it on and went through the messages, and I wish I hadn't. There were hundreds of texts between Derek and Emma, sweet and romantic and explicit. There were photos of Emma pregnant, photos of the baby, photos of Derek holding Olivia with the most loving expression on his face. Reading those messages was like stabbing myself over and over. Derek told Emma he loved her, that she and Olivia were his whole world, that he couldn't wait to build a life with them. These weren't the words of a man who was conflicted or guilty. These were the words of someone who was genuinely in love and excited about his new family, while simultaneously coming home to me every night and telling me he loved me too. I took the burner phone with me when I left, figured my lawyer might want it as evidence. I also grabbed some photo albums, kitchen items I particularly cared about, and a few pieces of furniture that were mine from before the marriage. By the time I finished packing, my car was completely full and I was emotionally exhausted. My mom came to visit yesterday, drove 3 hours to spend the day with me at Sarah's. It was good to see her, even though it was hard to talk about everything that's happened. She kept saying she couldn't believe Derek would do this, that she'd been so sure he was one of the good ones. I told her I'd thought so too, that clearly we'd both been wrong. Mom asked me if I was eating enough, sleeping enough, taking care of myself. The truth is I haven't been doing any of those things very well. I've lost weight because food doesn't appeal to me, I'm barely sleeping because my mind won't stop racing, and I definitely haven't been taking care of myself beyond basic hygiene. But I told her I was fine because I didn't want her to worry more than she already was. Before Mom left, she told me something that actually helped a bit. She said that someday, when enough time has passed, I'll be grateful this happened now instead of 10 years from now. She said better to find out who Derek really is before we had kids together, before we'd been married for decades, before I'd invested even more of my life into someone who didn't deserve it. She's right, even though it doesn't make the pain any less right now. I heard from Emma again too. She called to tell me she'd talked to a lawyer like I suggested, and had started the process of filing for child support. She said Derek had called her after getting my divorce papers, had been angry and accusatory, asking if she and I were working together against him. Emma said she'd told him yes, essentially we were, because we both deserved better than his lies. Emma also told me something interesting. Apparently Derek had been telling her he was going to file for divorce from me weeks ago, that the papers were coming any day, that soon they could be together openly. Obviously that was a lie, Derek never had any intention of divorcing me. He was planning to keep both relationships going indefinitely, or at least until someone forced his hand. Knowing that Derek was actively lying to Emma even recently, even after Olivia was born, somehow makes me feel better about her. She wasn't some knowing mistress who didn't care about breaking up a marriage. She was someone who genuinely believed she was in a relationship with a man who was leaving his wife. Derek manipulated both of us expertly. This morning, I had my first therapy session. Sarah helped me find a therapist who specializes in betrayal trauma and relationship issues. Her name is Dr. Morrison, and she's in her 50s, warm but straightforward, exactly what I needed. I spent the whole session telling her my story, and she listened without judgment, just asked clarifying questions here and there. At the end, Dr. Morrison said something that really resonated with me. She said that right now I'm probably questioning everything about my marriage, wondering what was real and what was performance. She said it's natural to do that, but I shouldn't let Derek's betrayal make me doubt my own experiences and feelings. My love was real, my commitment was real, my vision of our future was real. Derek's deception doesn't invalidate what I felt and experienced. She also said I should be prepared for the grief to come in waves, that some days I'll feel strong and capable, and other days I'll feel completely destroyed. She said healing from this kind of betrayal isn't linear, it's messy and complicated and takes time. But she assured me I would heal, that I would come out the other side of this stronger and wiser. I have another session with Dr. Morrison scheduled for next week. In the meantime, she gave me some homework, journaling exercises, and self-care routines to help me process everything. It feels good to have some structure, some concrete steps I can take toward healing. The divorce is moving forward. Patricia filed all the initial paperwork, and Derek has hired his own lawyer. Apparently he's claiming he wants to be fair and equitable in the division of assets, but Patricia said to be prepared for him to fight me on certain things. Men who cheat often feel entitled to more than they deserve, she said, because they've already rationalized their bad behavior in their own minds. We've set a court date for a preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. By then, hopefully the house will be on the market, and we'll have a clearer picture of our assets and debts. Patricia warned me that Derek might try to hide money or assets, given that he's already proven he's willing to be deceptive about finances. She's hiring a forensic accountant to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. I also found out that Derek has been telling people his own version of events. Mutual friends have been reaching out to me, confused and asking for my side of the story. Apparently Derek is saying that yes, he made a mistake and had an affair, but that our marriage was already falling apart, and I'm being vindictive by refusing to work things out. He's painting himself as the remorseful husband who made one mistake, and me as the unforgiving wife who won't give him a second chance. I've been setting the record straight with people who reach out, explaining the full scope of Derek's deception, the secret relationship that lasted over a year, the baby, the double life, the elaborate lies. Most people are shocked and immediately side with me, but a few have suggested maybe I'm being too harsh, that everyone makes mistakes. Those people are no longer in my life. It's been eye-opening to see who my real friends are through all this. Some people I thought would be supportive have been weirdly distant or judgmental. But others, people I wasn't even that close with before, have been incredibly kind and helpful. Sarah's friends have basically adopted me, including me in their girls' nights and offering to help however they can. Tomorrow, I'm going to start looking at apartments seriously. I've been browsing online, but I need to actually visit places and start the process of finding somewhere to live. The thought of living alone for the first time since college is both terrifying and exciting. It'll be my space, my fresh start, with no memories of Derek or our failed marriage. I keep thinking about the future, about what my life will look like a year from now, 5 years from now. I'll be divorced, living on my own, rebuilding my life from scratch at 30 years old. It's not at all what I imagined when I married Derek, when I thought we'd grow old together, have kids, build a life. But maybe it'll be better than what I had, which was apparently a complete illusion. One thing I know for sure, I'm never going to let anyone lie to me like this again. I'm going to trust my instincts, ask questions, not accept surface-level explanations. Derek's betrayal has taught me that trust has to be earned and maintained, that love without honesty is meaningless. Whoever I end up with next, if there is a next, will have to be someone who values transparency and communication above all else. For now, though, I'm just focused on getting through each day. Some days that means crying in bed until noon, and that's okay. Other days it means having productive conversations with my lawyer and packing up my old life, and that's okay too. There's no right way to handle having your entire world turned upside down. I'm just doing the best I can. So Reddit, that's where I am right now. Still processing, still grieving, still angry, but also moving forward. My husband pretended to go to work for 3 months while actually playing house with his mistress and secret baby, and now I'm divorcing him and starting my life over. It's a mess, it's painful, it's humiliating, but I'm going to survive it. I have to. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. I know it's a long, complicated story, but sometimes you just need to get it all out. Writing this has actually been therapeutic, seeing it all laid out in words instead of just swirling around in my head. If anyone else is going through something similar, you're not alone. We'll get through this. We're stronger than we think.